This is the Book Deal podcast, where you will discover the inspiring stories behind your favourite books. We interview seasoned and debut authors, as well as publishing industry professionals, to bring you the best tips and advice on how to get that elusive book deal. So no matter what stage of writing you're at, we've got you covered. I'm Tina Strawn.
I'm Madeline Cleary.
And I'm Natasha Rye. And join us as we pull back the curtain of published authors,
one deal at a time. The Book Deal podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging.
Hi everyone, it's Madeline here. I was fortunate to speak with beloved Australian writer Rebecca Lim. Rebecca is a writer, editor and lawyer and the author of over 20 books. Her books have been award-winning and best-selling and include Tiger Daughter, a Kirkus, Amazon and Booklist Best Book, CBCA Book of the Year and Victoria Premier's Literary Award winner. In fact, her writing has been either awarded or listed for pretty much every writing award in Australia. Rebecca has now turned her hand to writing for adults with her new crime thriller, The Graduate. Rebecca tells us why being a publishing flake might actually be a good thing, managing rejections and the financial realities of being an author, and how she balances life as a corporate lawyer, mother, dog owner, and writer. And a little spoiler, her advice includes the use of toilet paper rolls. Enjoy. Just a quick content warning, we do make some brief references to crimes against children in this episode, including a very, very quick discussion of historical cases. While we don't go into any detail, please be wary if you've got little ones around you or in the car. Rebecca Lim, welcome to the Book Deal podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Madeline.
Now, we were just talking about your author bio, actually. So you've written over 20 books.
Some of them are very short, so they may not count as books, but roughly about 23 or 24 now. I've lost count, I think.
It's amazing. And I feel like you've been recognised by almost every major literary award in Australia as well. I was looking at the long list of all the award winning, long listing, short listing, which is very impressive.
I think it's a function of having survived this long, possibly. I've been doing this for 23 years now. So someone hopefully at some point has noticed something, you hope, as a writer. So yeah.
Oh, you're too humble. But can you take us back to the beginning? Where did your love of writing and books come from?
I don't know if it's the same experience for you, but I basically started jotting down small stories and, illustrated things when I was about 7. So I think, if you really want to be a writer, it's something you can't actually stop doing. So you feel compelled to keep on putting things down on scraps of paper. So it used to frustrate me because sometimes you'd have a dream at night and you think I wrote a whole novel in my sleep. Right. And then you sort of get lazy. You don't write it down as soon as you wake up and it's all gone. So for me, ideas are coming from everywhere all the time. And, I'm picking up dialogue from people on the train platform and putting that into stories and stuff and seeing where things go. And unfortunately, because, you would know as well as I do, it's hard to make a living out of writing. You kind of have all these scraps of stories that could potentially become something, but you've got to work out which one of them actually has legs. So long story short, I think I've just always been doing it and I've always tried to put the ideas in one spot. But if you look around my house and it's quite a bomb site, there's just scraps of writing on every pamphlet, American Express pamphlets, electricity bills, that kind of thing. And you're just constantly, tinkering away with ideas.
Because I often find with some writers that there is someone that's really encouraged their writing in their past. Is there someone for you that's really sort of brought that out and encouraged you?
I've been really lucky because I had some really lovely English teachers. When I was a younger kid, I was really, really shy. We didn't speak English at home for many years as the primary language. So didn't have a lot of really great books at home, probably medical journals for my dad and also, Peter Bentley's Jaws, just awful, pulp fiction-y type books like Lucifer's Hammer, that kind of thing. So I wasn't really reading that stuff at home, but I just had these wonderful teachers at school. There was a library teacher in grade 5. I don't know if she's still around, but that was MLC. She encouraged me to read really widely. So I read everything in the library. I'd read everything in the local library. Had a lovely teacher from year 10 to year 12 who checked in on me even when she wasn't teaching me, called Elizabeth Callanan. And so, before my final like year 12 English exam, she had me over just to have lunch and just talk about how I was feeling and how did I think I would go. So just really lovely things like that. Like, it wasn't really a writing mentor, I think, when I was younger. It was more people saying you can actually do this. And even though you're not comfortable speaking in public or you don't know how to pronounce the word hypotenuse, there's something in your writing which is, really interesting and should be encouraged. So I think my teachers were really, really encouraging.
Oh, thank God for English teachers, right?
I know. Like, how do they get through all those essays and all those crazy thoughts that people have, non sequiturs, all that kind of thing. So for someone to sort of wade through 200 essays and go, actually, yours has got something in it, we should try and encourage something is really special.
You obviously have been writing all your life. Was there a moment, though, where you thought to yourself, I really want to get this published, like your writing published?
I've done some really crazy things. So in the past, when you could actually just walk sort of, unsecured into a publishing office, I think when I was in like year 8 or 9, I'd hand drawn this picture book. I think it was called Peace is a Bird. Not a very novel idea, but like it was all hand done, coloured in. And I was an idiot because like I obviously didn't know anything about the industry. So I walked into this publishing company in suburban Baldwin, Methuen. I don't know if that imprint exists in Australia anymore, but I said, here's my picture book. And they were like, thanks. And they took it off me, like 14-year-old. That's my only copy, right? Because there's no photocopiers back then. They take it off me. They keep it for a few days. Like, they were kind. So they looked like they were reading it. And then they gently sort of returned it in the post and said, it was really nice, really enjoyed reading it, but it wasn't quite right for our list. So they did the whole publishing thing. And like, my parents, who didn't know anything about that either, would drop me off there to drop off this book. And so that was my first taste of like being rejected by a publisher as a 14-year-old. And then after that, I think I was probably the most rejected person from the Vogel Awards. Do you remember those?
Yes, yes.
Yes, you probably entered that too. And I think, I was trying to sort of juggle a career at a really major law firm where they just expected you to die in your chair. So you'll see some of that in The Graduate. But
yes.
I was trying to juggle that with writing. And so I think the 5th time I got rejected, Alan and Unwin actually wrote back to me and they said, the judges said it was appalling, like it was not a good manuscript, but they want you to know, and they hardly ever do this, that you actually can write. So if you can write something better than this, we will read it. So I just thought, that's like the sign that I need to quit this crazy job where I'm lying face down in a pool of saliva at 11 o'clock at night, working on some crazy deal, and just take some time off to do some writing. So, I just used to enter everything and, maybe come third or maybe get a highly commended on a short story thing. Or the important thing for me was getting the feedback. So if someone said to you, like, can't publish it, but it's got something to it. If you rework it this way, we might look at it again. That kind of stuff was like gold because I just had no contacts in the industry. So that was kind of the stuff that I was looking for. Someone going, actually, there's something here.
Wow. And that validation is just so important when you're experiencing so many rejections as well.
Yeah, like how did you feel like, getting your first contract? Did you also enter all sorts of things and, try and sort of get feedback from industry professionals and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I went through literary speed dating, but I'd written 3
Oh, that's
previous
tough.
books. Yeah, but that suits my personality style. Like I'm happy to get in front. But I'd written 3 other novels which had just sat in the drawer, and because I just wasn't confident in them. So it wasn't until I wrote The Butterfly Wing which I felt like I wanted to get published.
Yeah, and you also probably thought, I've done the work now. Like I've actually been through this process 3 times. I know how to like structure it now. I know how to end this thing. Like I know not to blunder around in the wilderness and plot it and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think 10,000 hours you do that.
Exactly.
So you decided to take some time off your corporate lawyer career to write. And so how did you go about then? Like what was the yes moment? Because it was with Mercy series, I'm guessing.
It was terrifying, actually. So, I mean, before Mercy, I think I was like out in the wilderness for like maybe 3.5 years. And I think in the first year where I wasn't working as a lawyer, I earned $500 as a writer. Yeah. So you can imagine, like I had no kids at that point, but I had a husband. So it was like, if he didn't have a salary, we would literally die. Like we couldn't even live on dog food. That's not enough money. So I think I started off, and, being a pragmatic commercial person, it's like, how do I get runs on the board? It's like a catch-22. If I'm not published and I've got nothing on my CV, no one will want to publish me. So how do I get that first contract? So for me, and it sounds, a little bit cold, but it was like, well, I can write a kid's book. Like I've got lots of ideas. I can write something funny. I can write something short, and let's see how that goes. And so like I started off with sort of these humorous detective stories for kids that I got to illustrate as well, which I can't do anymore. I'm not allowed to illustrate anything with pedophiles in it, for example. Like, I mean, it's just not right. But like I wrote these like books for kids and found myself getting published that way. And then I think over the years, like I've moved up the age range because I think the real me, the me that I have to filter for children's books, I'm a bit sweary and I'm a bit rude and, you know, like I'm a bit cutting and I'm a bit satirical, and you can't be like that in kids' books. Like
you have to tone it down, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, you kind of can't be your full, unfiltered, darkly humorous self, right? Because it's too much for people. So I think what I've done is like, and you'll find this too, to have a really long career in writing, you need to be interested in what you're doing. Like I find, you know, some people are comfortable doing the same thing every 6 months or every year. This is their genre, this is their brand, they just do this thing, it's very easy, you know, they've got the same sort of like archetypal characters and they just pump these amazing things out and earn a mozza from them, right? But for someone like me, and I think it keeps it interesting for readers as well, if I'm interested in doing a different genre, and I've done lots of different genres just like you have, historical, you know, humor, contemporary, young adult, children's, toddlers, adults, right? If I'm interested in the story and I can make myself laugh or I can make myself feel goosebumps, I'm hoping that the reader will get that as well. So I think the way I've kept my career going is what interests me that I think would interest other people, and, you know, possibly taps into a zeitgeist or taps into a gap that is not filled, or, you know, like people have not addressed. So for example, with your novel, you're looking at a historical period that a lot of contemporary Australians don't know about. And so they're assuming marvelous Melbourne just grew up, you know, looking sophisticated and glossy, and this is how it always was. But I'm like you, interested in interrogating all those unseen stories that people don't get to hear about. So a lot of my work is about, okay, we've always been fed this notion of Australia as this kind of nation filled with these kinds of people. And like for me, it's a big pushback all the time. Like I'm not putting a big red neon sign over my book saying issues. I'm dealing with issues, but I'm always saying there's more than one Australian story and there's more than one Australia. And all of my novels, even though they're, you know, crime, paranormal, whatever, they're all trying to expand this notion of who are we as a country? Who are we as people? You know, what is the story that what are the fictions we tell ourselves? What are the real stories that sit underneath those kinds of things?
That's so interesting. I love that, because if you were to look at all your list of books that you've published, it is cross-genre, it's cross age groups, it's everything, but, you know, you've got that common thread, that common interest. And then, I mean, if we're not interested in what we're writing, what's the point as well?
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, by the end, like you look at the, you know, your oeuvre and you kind of think, well, I didn't really extend myself much and they're all kind of quite interchangeable. And like, that's not something I wanted to wake up to one day. And also, like, you know, constrained by the realities of life, you know, you kind of go to the publishers who will publish your next weirdness. So for me, I mean, a lot of people have, and it looks terrible, they've stuck by the one publisher because that one publisher will give them the marketing platform and they've got this whole sort of backstory and, you know, it's all very continuous and historical for them to be with that one publisher. But for me, because I write such weird things, it's whoever will publish my work and thinks it's of value that I will gravitate towards. So like, you know, I've been very lucky in my publishers. So HarperCollins were lovely and they published my paranormal novels, but I think they were then expecting me to keep going that way. And when I then served up a crime novel, they were like, well, that's not really, you know, and so that's why I moved to text for that one. So it looks like I'm a complete flake and it looks like I can't, you know, just sort of stick to one lane, but it's not interesting for me to do that. And I don't think it's interesting for readers either if you just do the same thing all the time.
Okay, well, let's talk about The Graduate then. We ask Rebecca on the podcast for authors to give their elevator pitch for their novels, which is something that I find terrible. Like, I'm very bad at giving my elevator pitch. Do you have an elevator pitch for The Graduate?
I could be quite terrible at that as well. I mean, that's why, like, when you were saying that speed dating was like a good thing for your personality, I was like, that is the worst, because I'd be like unable to get the words out and there'd be like bells ringing, move on. And I'd be like, I haven't even said my name yet. Like, I just, so the elevator pitch for this, it's really, I always say this to people, it's like and it probably sounds very, very fascinating. It's a piss take of the Australian legal industry, 1970s career criminals. So you're a lot younger than I am, but I grew up watching terrible shows like Homicide and Cop Shop, right, with these gruff, burly Australian police slash criminal characters on them. It's a piss take of colonialism because I think we have this view of Australia being this golden country that was, like grown off a sheep's back. And that was all sort of like, we're out in the sun, like cutting down wheat. It was all very healthy and nothing bad happened. So in this novel, I'm kind of dealing with that whole, well, where did the fertilizer that we use to grow the wheat that the sheep lived off come from? So it's going back into the myth of what our country's built on as well as layering it with like a crime narrative. So it sounds like a lot going on there, but the school that I went to in high school unfortunately has a link to the unsolved Mr. Cruel series of crimes against children. And so another kind of theme in my novels is, violence against women and children is absolutely abhorrent. And the fact that we're seeing this absolute avalanche of women being killed by their domestic partners or by strangers or whatever, even in my books for really small children, like I'm still dealing with that whole women and children have to be safe. Like, why are we not keeping them safe? They should always be safe. And if someone who looks powerless can actually take back some power or change the narrative, I'm very interested in stories like that. So that was like the longest elevator pitch ever. But basically, crime, lawyers, colonialism, terrible 1970s Australian TV shows. That's the elevator pitch.
And an urban Melbourne setting, and darkly humorous as well. Like it, when you do read the sort of premise of it, it does deal with a lot of dark material, as you noted, but there's a humor to it as well. And Fei Fei Chou is a great narrator as well of this story. Like her voice is fantastic. So we will talk about, before we do go into the book though, I'm really curious because you were talking earlier about, how I suppose writers are expected to stick in their lanes in terms of genre and sort of writing for a particular audience. You mentioned in your acknowledgements at the end of the book that you actually found like a lot of publishers were kind of like, oh, this is a pedo book. You don't want to touch it.
I know it's hard because like you tell people, hey, it's a really funny novel, but it's about pedophiles, and people are like, I don't understand any of that like thing that you just said. No, because like it's not, I have no brand. Like I'm one of the authors I think in Australia who definitely doesn't have a definite brand. But I think because I've written so much for children and it's been so I guess people look at me and think educational writer or, big themes writer, or she writes about immigrants in a really kind of like accessible way. So when I then
Tiger Daughter,
that kind of thing.
Beloved, award-winning, yeah.
Well, it's really just about writing about, Australian kids who are not sort of the norm, I guess. But they kind of said, we can't fit, like this doesn't, like in a library, would they put this next to you? And I'm like, no, they wouldn't, because they're big in the kids section and then this would be in the adult section. They're like, but they would shelve them together and then they'd read them. And I'm like, well, you can't stop kids reading what they want to read, right? So I think for them, it was like possibly it didn't sit well with what I usually do. And so they just couldn't touch it with a barge pole. Like they were literally like, I don't know what to, like, how do we even, like, how do you talk about this next to your other stuff? And like, I have lovely friends in the industry. One of them runs a bookshop and he was saying, ordinarily we'd host you for a, like a launch, but how do we, so that's the thing. Like everyone's like, how do we deal with this one? Like this is not the same as the others, right? Not that I write the same thing all the time. This is really not the same as the others. So left field, we can't position it.
And so that's such a shame, because the whole purpose of the book is to give voice and agency to people that traditionally don't have a voice.
And the thing is, like, I'd like to think that, one of the damaged children characters from one of my novels, if she grew up and was pursuing somebody to the ends of the earth, this is what it would look like. Like, sorry, this is what it would look like, this whole thing. She would not stop. She'd be like the Terminator until she got what she wanted. So yeah.
Exactly. And I think it was such a page turner, and I think because it has that revenge thriller. So Fei Fei Chou, we should talk about her. So she is a graduate. She's starting at this very intense corporate law firm, which made me very glad that I never looked at to becoming a lawyer. It just sounds so cutthroat. There's a lot of I think you described them as high functioning sociopaths that work
Yeah,
in a big
absolutely.
corporate law firm. But she's not there to sort of climb the ladder, like she's there out for revenge. Can you talk about, I suppose, your approach to giving Faye a voice and a little bit about her as a character?
Okay. So without giving too much away, I think with the Mr. Cruel cases, one of the child victims unfortunately was murdered, and so this was kind of a thought experiment where imagine if the murdered girl actually didn't die, but decided to come back and try and figure out who had done this to her and the other children. So that's basically the premise for it. Like I don't want to spoil it necessarily because there's a bit of a twist in it, but it's really like how do you take your apparent mild-mannered looking facade and your meekness and your lack of voice and your funny accent and all the things that don't make you look like any of the other corporate graduates in this, top tier law firm. How do you take that apparent lack of cachet and turn that into something that gets you what you want? So it's also the story of most young women starting in a corporate environment, I think. I mean, you told me that you work in the government aspect, but it would be similar. Like you start out really fresh, really young. You don't know anything. You don't know how to talk to people, and all of a sudden you've got these massive, brutish personalities screaming at you, making you cry in a meeting room, like just absolutely bathing you in acid so that you can grow up to be just like them, right? So for me, literally year 9, I couldn't pronounce the word hypotenuse. I could spell it, but I couldn't say it properly. So like sometimes I'd say things and they'd come out and people would laugh. That's not how you say that. Hypotenuse, that's not how you say it. So I'd take these years and years of conditioning, like, Chinese cultural background. Children are seen and not heard. Women don't speak back. The men do all the deciding. Why is the woman working? The man should be working. All the men's jobs, women's jobs, taking all of that conditioning into a really massively, at that point when I was a graduate, Caucasian and work environment dominated by these hugely, personified men who brought in the deals and, had the lunches and, had memberships to the Savage Club and the Melbourne Club and, all that stuff. And then booming at you, Rebecca, the Grange range has just come out for the year. You've got to lay down a case. And I used to think to myself, it's $1,000 a bottle. Like even back then, it's like, how can I lay down a case of Grange? I earn that maybe in 3 months or something. It's just, so that kind of environment where you're smashing these raw young women who don't have the social graces, obviously didn't grow up in the, beachside Portsea mansion, right? And trying to teach them to be like men, for example. I wanted to sort of send up all that stuff as well, which hopefully I've done.
Oh, you have. Yes, you did it so, so well. And also I think women in those types of roles, I mean, we're sort of born to be people pleasers as well.
It's like, yeah, I'll do what you want. Like, even if it means I have to work for 3 days in a row without sleep, I'll do it. That
exactly. Kind of you don't really know how to say no, do you? You just
no, it's impossible. That's where the darkly humorous comes from, because I've been trying to juggle the law and the writing and the writing in the car and the trying to write a novel while you're in your office drinking vodka at 3 a.m. because you're waiting for a fax to come in. You're like, that's how old I am. We had faxes of agreements come through. So all that, trying to juggle all these years of seeing how young women were treated in the workplace, seeing how older women were treated in the workplace, and smashing all of that social commentary into the background of a crime novel as well. So it's trying to do lots of things. And I think, unfortunately, it has lost some readers, because some readers have been going, I just wanted a standard crime novel, right? Why is she going on about colonialism and fertilizer and Australia and who cares about sexism and, all that stuff? Because, nowadays there are Gen Z women around who go, I'm not a feminist. And it's like, how could you not be a feminist? You know what I mean? Because they've forgotten about what it took to get them to the point where they're an influencer, that kind of thing. They're making their living from cooking on Instagram. But I was just trying to do a big take on that whole thing that we survive in order to get good enough to just exist in our workplace and be taken seriously.
Well, let's actually talk about then the fact that this is not your typical Australian crime, outback noir, rural, small town setting. Um,
Mm.
was it deliberate, I suppose, for you to move away from those tropes, and your exploration into the real? And I had no idea about this. Like I thought I was a well-educated Australian citizen, but I had no idea about the phosphate mining, the offshore phosphate mining that we did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that stuff is pretty grim. Like
Mm.
there's just so much damage that we've left behind, and the fact that we have offshore detention centres now. Where did that come from? It came
Mhm.
from, this history of shit mining other places, right? No, for me, it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't that deliberate. Like I've always tried to, everyone always tries to tell their own story, right? So like I've always just tried to tell stories that aren't completely foreign to me. So if I tried to write a rural noir, people would go, she doesn't know the back end of a sheep from the front end. Like this doesn't read authentically whatsoever, right? So for me, when I write crime novels, like I've written two young adult ones, and this is the first adult one. They're always set in Melbourne because I know Melbourne, right? And so, like, I've had readers engage so hard that they've said, I would not have driven down St Kilda Road at that time of day to get to the police station. I disagree with Rebecca on that, right? So, like, I like setting it in a place that's so real and specific that when people read it, they can smell the street. They know what they're looking at if they're from here or they're Australian. They can see the context, right? So for me, like, trying to write a domestic rural outback noir would just be really wrong. Like it'd be like me trying to write an African fantasy novel. Like I would get it so wrong, it wouldn't be funny. Like people would be picking it apart for the mistakes. So it wasn't, I guess, like I'm not trying to say that I'm prescient and I'm, trying to write something different or urban where everyone else is doing that kind of thing. But I just don't feel like it would have been authentic if I'd done that. Like, there is a bit of a rural aspect to this, but everyone's been to a farm. You can describe superficially what a cattle farm looks like without getting it totally wrong. But if I, an urban, Melbourne educated person, tried to set a novel in Alice Springs, goodness me, the blowback. It would be terrible. You know what I mean? So I think I take it as a basis that if you want a really rich world, you should actually understand and know what you're writing about.
Yeah.
So that takes away that whole rural romance noir thing. I can't do that. I've never been a rural person. And like my husband used to laugh at me because like we'd go into country towns and I'd go, oh, that pub looks really dangerous. We shouldn't stop here for lunch. And he'd be like, don't be stupid. So we just stop, and they were the friendliest people ever, right? But that's the kind of person I am. I'd be like, oh my God, someone's going to be racist to me in this country town. And like inevitably everyone's lovely. But see, that's the thing. I would never be able to write the story there because I don't feel like I'm native to it, or I don't feel like I know it well enough.
No, I understand. And so then how did you end up weaving in, because I think you called it plot B or part B, the sort of offshore
Yeah, the B plot.
the B
Um,
plot. Yeah, and how did you make it seem quite seamless as well? Because, Faye starts investigating into this kind of subplot. And it felt like it was still part of that narrative, the central narrative.
without being tacked on like this thing.
Yeah, like, oh, I want to put a message in. You know how sometimes
Yeah,
when
oh,
you read
good. I'm
books, you're like,
glad.
oh, I feel like I'm just
Yeah,
getting
here's the
told things.
issue. Big
Yeah.
issue right here. Yeah, no, I try not to do that. I mean, the thing is like, and this is not speaking out of school, but when I worked in these massive law firms, and I've worked in some really big ones and some really small ones as well, um, you know, when I was a graduate, I'd be rootling through these old boxes looking for some, arcane advice that a barrister had given 20 years before because somebody needed it. I remember someone said in 1987, la la la, go find it.
Oh my
And I'd be
gosh.
like, there's 16 boxes of documents. Are you serious? But see, the thing was like there was one night I was there really late and I did have to rootle through all these boxes. And it was a small Pacific nation that we had acted against that was claiming something. And so I had to find something to defend against something they were saying, right? And it was in one of those boxes. And so I had that in my head for years and years because I just thought the might of this massively wealthy firm and whoever's standing behind them, probably the government, trying to find some response to something that this tiny country has said about something. They've just put a physical human there and said, don't go home and watch the Sydney Olympics opening ceremony. Go through the boxes and find whatever that quote was. So all that stuff has been percolating in my head for a very long time. And I just thought to myself, how has Mr. Cruel, even with a $1 million reward on his head for the last 20 years, right? How has he managed to escape even getting his name out there? Like, no one knows at all who this person is. He must have been protected, or he must have been so well networked, so standard Australian that he could get away with it and never be found. So I just thought, how do you do that in this society? You look like the power makers, you look like the people with money, or you have access to the people with money, or you have access to that kind of environment. And so that's why the B plot's probably been percolating in my head a lot longer than the A plot, because I just thought, how do people get away with these things? How do people afford law firms where a human being charges you $1,000 an hour for advice, right? How is that possible? So, someone like me who grew up wearing corduroy bell bottoms in like some outer suburban house, right? To get access to that environment and think, I will never be like you people. Like, I can speak the language, I can write the words, I can quote the footnotes, I can do all that, I can use the Latin, but I'll never be like you. And I'll never be able to move through the corridors of power like you, and I'll never have the same kind of experience that you do. That's been with me my whole life. Like, I don't think you ever feel, like, I never feel totally Australian. I'm very proud to be Australian. I love Australia. I get on the plane coming home on a Qantas flight, listen to the music, get teary, right? But often I still find myself, in a room full of shouting people going, how did I get here? I don't understand. Like, I'm never going to have the same experience that you guys do or feel the same way.
But you could feel that, I suppose, in the novel. Like, there was a lot of rage in there, and that anger and that feeling of belonging and calling herself, and we won't spoil things, but of course she grapples with this. She has two kind of sides to her personality that come through. One being Australian,
the meek one,
and
then
and so she's battling with this as well, and this sense of belonging. So I definitely can see that coming through. It was an amazing book and such a page turner. You managed to pull so many incredible things through this novel. So congratulations, Rebecca.
Thank you. I'm glad it worked, because to some people it reads like a pastiche of all the hot topics that Rebecca's worried about. But for other people, they've actually just said, I just kept reading. Like, I didn't think about, I just read it, because they weren't thinking about, are there political issues in this? What's she trying to say? They just read it. So I think the people who are like spotting the political issues got hung up on the what's she trying to do. But then I'm really happy that there's this whole subset of people who just read it and thought, I'm having a good time while I'm reading it.
He was supposed to be dead. He promised. Hey, Book Deal podcast listeners. My name is Anna Woods, and my novel Lit was published on the 2nd of June by Echo Publishing. Lit asks the question, what would you do if someone you knew came back from the dead? When the man she forced to disappear returns, Jin must protect her secrets or risk losing her business, her partner, perhaps even her mind. But dissembling isn't easy when you don't know who to trust. Many people who have lost someone have had the experience of recognising them in a crowd and doing a double take. This happened to me driving to work one day. And I wondered what it would be like if the person wasn't dead at all, but living a secret life. This led me into a shadowy world of people who have faked their own deaths, who buy fake death certificates and real dead bodies for fake wakes, or follow complicated protocols like digital pollution to ensure all traces of them disappear. But not everyone who disappears stays that way. Lit is about what happens when someone returns. A psychological slow burn for readers of Anna Downs, J.P. Pomare and Jacqueline Bublitz, Lit is a tense, twist-driven literary suspense about love, control, and the dangerous power of a secret that won't stay hidden.
So when you got the yes from a firm, how did that feel? And then talk through, I suppose, the editing, because you've obviously worked with many different publishers in your career. So I'm interested to see if there's anything different working on an adult crime book.
The firm were amazing because I think they've been the only firm ever who have said to me, and this is not a pejorative thing, they've said you need to tell more and not show so much. So like with my kids' books, like often, for example, with Tiger Daughter, there's a central suicide. And so my publisher said, you can't show any of it. Like you can't show her hanging in a tree. You can't even allude to that. Like you just need to have him look out the window at it, right? And so I think with kids' books a lot, um, obviously tender minds, you don't want to like traumatize your readers. You have to dance around a lot of dark topics. So you kind of like allude to it happening off camera, but you can't actually go, and he was dripping with blood, or you can't kill people, on screen because it's for children. But with Affirm, like they basically said, do whatever you like, but make sure it's clear, right? Like make sure it's really clear. So, I mean, working in the legal industry, just like in your own industry, there's so much arcane language. We take for granted that people understand, what IBID means or LOCSIT means, or, what does it mean to when we do these things? What's a company search, right? We just assume that knowledge because we deal with those, very basic units of stuff every day. But for Affirm, they were going, it's actually quite a bizarre industry. And if you want to bring out how bizarre it is, you need to make it absolutely clear to people how non-standard this thing is, or how this thing that you've asked one character to find for another character is. Like, what does that mean when they pull out that thing and he says this? What does that actually mean? What are they looking for, right? And so I think what they did was actually take me back to, okay, I need to communicate things. And that's what I do with kids' books. I need to communicate something clearly to this particular audience. I'm now dealing with adults, so I can swear, I can show blood, I can show violence, that's fine. But when I talk about, this sort of legal environment and why it's so, like sneaky or weird or bizarre, that needs to be first explained to people before you can drop them in it, because they're not going to understand what is a law firm. Why are there these men and women? Why do these people do these things for? Why do they, why do they have graduates? Like, what are they? So all that kind of stuff, they were like, you're assuming too much. People will not get from here to here. It's still not clear. And so that was a really good thing with the firm, because it was a shock for me, because I was like, I haven't been structurally edited like this for 10 years now. Like, I was like, what do you mean I have to do a structural edit? And they were like, you need to do a hard structural edit. And here's the, 10-page Excel/Word document that you need to follow for me to understand what you're talking about when you say this. Wow. So it was a huge shock, actually, because I think I'd gotten really lucky, and I just turned things in and people would say, no structural edit for you. We're just going to copy edit. Fantastic, right? Like, fantastic. You've done your 6 months or year of writing, and it's just commas after that, and then it goes to publication. But for this one, they were like, I don't know what you mean when you say national police check. Like, what are you looking for with that? So all of that stuff, you had to drop it into the story without going, hey, reader, I'm now going to explain to you what a national police check is. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's really hard. So you're trying to like seamlessly go, and this is what a company search guy does, and this is what he generates. And from that thing that he's generated, you can find a clue, right? So it was like trying to bring people back to basics, like rather than me just going, oh, but no one's done like a credit check on her. People are like, what is a credit check, right? Like, why would they be doing one on that person? It's trying to like integrate that into the story without bogging it down. So that was quite hard. Like, a firm just said, pare it back, pare it back, pare it back.
Wow.
So there was all this like highfalutin, lovely language in there before, and they devastated me because the whole of the beginning is different. They said, cut that whole chapter out. We don't need it. And I was like, no, I love that chapter. I've had it since the beginning. And they're like, it doesn't have a place anywhere in this book.
So, kill your darlings. It's so hard, isn't it?
So badly. Like, I completely stabbed it and killed it. It was gone. So, like, I have a memory of that first chapter, and I might even publish it one day as a standalone thing just for fun so people could see one of the characters' backstories. But they were like, it has no place in this plot, and it pulls everything back, and it's too slow.
And that's the thing when you're writing like crime, commercial crime as well, where you
I mean, I don't know if I've actually achieved commercial crime, but this is my best attempt at that. So yeah.
No, it's page turning, it's gripping. Of course, it's not necessarily follows the tropes of a traditional Australian crime, rural. But I think
and like I've said, I probably couldn't do that. Like,
exactly. No, this is it's wonderful, and I thought that because it's so clever and super smart, and yes, that you do it so well because there is a lot of legal terms in it, but you do explain it in a way that doesn't feel like you're just, hello, this is Rebecca, I need to explain this
And
to
this is
them.
what a judgment looks like, and this
Yeah.
is what the judge would say. Yeah, that kind of stuff. So it's hard because I mean, in my day-to-day life, I am known as the most boring technical lawyer probably in my team. That is what I'm supposed to do. Like I'm supposed to tell you, this really arcane provision in this act of legislation. This is what it means for us if you don't follow it, right? And so I'm the most boring technical lawyer you could possibly imagine, but I couldn't allow any of that to bog down the storyline in the graduate. It's like, you can understand it and you can allude to it, but don't get caught up in what does the United Nations Charter Provision 23 XI say, that kind of thing. Like you just can't. Like you read it as research and then you kind of integrate it in one sentence and you move on because that's all you can do.
If people have watched Suits, I think they'll get that. Like, the TV show Suits.
Yeah.
There'll
Where
be
our
some knowledge
infamous,
there.
Her Royal Highness came from.
Exactly,
But
exactly. So,
Yep.
I think for people who watch that, I think it's kind of sort of similar patterns. Now I want to ask you, did you enjoy the process of writing for adults as opposed to kids? And will you continue writing adult books?
I would love to. I mean, if anyone will have me, if they can actually shelve it anywhere. But I started off, like I was telling you offline. I started off trying to write for adults really badly. So I think I've got 5. Unlike you, I've got 5 rejected manuscripts in a drawer somewhere. And
What genre are they?
Probably contemporary, actually.
Okay.
Like they were sort of those, I mean, I'm very old, so like late 1980s, early 90s, kind of like, I don't know, like vaguely romantic, vaguely literary, wandering around London type things, right? Like just dreadful. They were really dreadful. But 5 adult things that never sort of saw the light of day. And then pragmatically started writing for kids because I thought, okay, what's short? What can I finish? What will someone like? Like you can write to deadline, you know how to do, you can fulfill a contract, you're a lawyer. How do you get published, right? So I really, really like focused on how do I get that first book published, and then I'll see what happens. So I'm hoping I can do more adult books in future as well as kids books. But the good thing about writing for adults is you can swear. Like in my daily life, I probably every second word is a swear word. And so like for my children's books, it's like they're so nice. Like it's such a nice version of my authorial voice that it's been so liberating to just F, 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 like, in this. I mean, my parents read it and they were like quite shocked. They were like, swearing in that? We didn't know that you knew those words. So yeah, I even put Chinese swear words in it. So I've just gone to absolute town. But the really good thing about writing for adults is you can be your unfiltered self. And if you want to write about something completely esoteric, like, digging up fertilizer in a Pacific nation, you can, because kids are not going to go, that's not something I can write about on my, SAC next week, because it's got no relevance to anything I'm studying. It's got no relevance to the themes, got no relevance to the whatever criteria they call it nowadays. But with adults, you can go off on these weird tangents and indulge in that, and it's completely fine. So it's really nice to write for adults because you actually are just allowed to be yourself, I think.
I really want to talk to you now about your writing practice. You've mentioned a few times that you're working as a corporate lawyer. How do you balance that with the writing?
Okay, I don't know how you've managed to do it, but like I'm supposedly on paper supposed to work Mondays to Thursdays, and then the other days of the week I'm supposed to be writing. But in reality, like often after a long work day and I've fed everyone and everything's tidied up, I'll go back to my desk and I'll do creative stuff because, there's something I need to finish, or I'm really energized about something, I need to do it, or there's a deadline or something. So I basically work while my eyes are open, and that's probably you as well, right? Like you're working on something. Like it could be technical writing, it could be editing writing, it could be creative writing, but you're just doing something while you're awake. And that's pretty much how you get through it. There's no balance. You just keep writing.
Is that sustainable?
I think so. Like I'm pretty old now. I'm still here. So, like I'm legendary for telling lots of kids authors, don't worry about waiting for your kids in the car park. Just get a 20-pack of toilet roll, put your laptop on it, and just get there early and off you go, right? Because I can literally work standing up in like an Aldi. Like I can just there doing stuff. You just do it.
Have you ever had any moments of burnout in your career?
Yeah, I actually massively burnt out. So like I was telling you off camera, the Alan and Unwin story where like I got rejected from the Vogel Awards for the 5th time, like literally the 5th time, I'm not exaggerating. And they said, you actually can write that this was crap. the thing that you handed in, but if you write something better, we'll read it. And here's the name of someone you can send it to. And I was like, that's like the first real validation from an adult human that I actually could maybe use these writing skills that I've developed in a law firm or whatever in another way. And so like I left law because I was really burnt out. Like I'd been, and this is not something I can really explain in the graduate either, but I'd been seconded into like large corporations. So that's where you're not only working as a lawyer at your firm, but you're also during the day working for other people and helping them with their legal team and their workload, right? So I was doing my practice and also being seconded with these other places. And I just had back-to-back years and years of this stuff where I was just like literally, I'd be lucky if I was at home for maybe 6 or 7 hours in a day. So, you know, I just thought that validation from Ellen Unwin actually said to me, I can take time off. I don't need to do this anymore. I've saved up some money. I can see if I can get something published. If I don't, I'll go back to work, right? And it turned out that I think I was away for 13 years because kids happened in between. So I've taken time off to write, but then kids happened as well. And how do you do lawyering, writing, and having kids? You just can't. Something has to break. So, it's just been, if you look at the way my career has developed, it's really kind of patchy and strange and not linear. And that's, I think that's most women.
Yeah, for sure. Balancing it. I was talking earlier with a friend. She calls it, you have got many plates that you're sort of tossing around and balancing, but some of them have to be plastic as well. So when they fall, they don't break. So it's
the plastic one was my law career for a long time.
Yeah.
I remember coming back after 13 years because my husband was ill and I thought I'm going to help again. Like, you know, the little fripperies that I earned through writing are not going to keep us going. I just remember going back to the Corporations Act, which is like my primary piece of legislation, which is like this thick, right? I make a joke about it in the novel that you could use it to kill people with. It's so thick. And the section that I used to work with, it was completely gone. I was like, where is that now? Like, you know, that in the 13 years I'd been away, the law had totally restructured or cannibalized itself. So it was like totally different. So yeah, that's the thing. Like most women are like, I'm trying to write a book. I'm also trying to like hold down a paid job. I'm trying to look after children. And there's all this stuff. And like, you know, inevitably, and, you know, people would level this criticism at me. You're kind of doing everything half-assed. But that's all we're given. That's sort of all the time and the space that we're given to do all this stuff. So you do the best you can.
If you could, is your ideal that your writing sustains you financially?
That would be the ideal, but, you know, like, I mean, I don't know if you know some really, really famous authors. I don't think I know any. But, you know, there's the 2% like Stephen King who can endow foundations with money. But the rest of us are just journey people.
Mm-hmm.
We just try our best to get, you know, like I have a group of writers that I often hang out with. We mostly write YA, although some of us are branching out into other things now. But we just laugh about how unsustainable it is. Like it still is. Like a lot of us have been doing it for decades and it's still unsustainable. And we're still like, you know, telling each other how tiny our advances are and, you know, you couldn't live off tuna to, you know, for the year with that kind of amount of money. And everyone does it for the love. Like you look at the publishing firms stocked with these women who work too hard, who don't get paid. It's just all these people just trying to help each other get something out there. And if you get a contract, it's actually just a miracle. It really is.
Absolutely. I'm also, before we finish up, I've got a couple more questions. I'm just really interested because I also have, the day job, and it is very different to my creative work. It's governments, it's dealing with regulations and policy and, you know, quite dry sort of things. Do you ever find it difficult to switch between your legal brain, your creative brain?
I don't know. I think I approach everything, like even the legal, technical, dry stuff, I approach it with a sense of dark humor. So I think the legal stuff helps the creative stuff in the sense that nothing is frightening, right? Like, you know, if you've got a really terrible technical policy, regulation, whatever you're looking at, you know that you need to distill it down for yourself and for other people. So no topic is too hard, right? So as a creative writer, that's very liberating because you never go, I can't ever tackle that because I'll never understand it. You have to understand it in your day job. Like if someone said to you, I need you to tell me about the pharmaceutical industry and how they treat equine drugs, right? You're like, bloody hell, I have no idea about that, but I can find out. So that kind of skill is really useful for a creative writer because nothing is off limits. Like you really literally can go down rabbit holes and go, what nugget of, really spicy different information can I pull out of this research to just drop as a one-liner in my story? So that's really useful. And then for the legal side, I mean, you shouldn't be saying this out loud, but if you're a creative thinker and you've got a really technical problem to get around, it's the best skill in the world because you're not going to be blinkered by, but the words just say this. You're like, well, no, the words could say something else if you read it this way. So I think they're both, it's actually, this is not a secret. Like my parents really, really, really pushed me to do medicine, like really hard. And I've, brought down the family name for generations now because I never did that. I went and did law instead. But the thing about being a lawyer is, and this is what I, as a child, handing in that picture book as a 14-year-old to some publishing house, how do I get the keys to the kingdom? How do I understand how to become a writer? I need to work with language. I don't need to work with dead bodies or living bodies. I need to work with language. Okay, so it was quite deliberate for me to go, actually, I'm not going to do medicine and I'm going to do law. And I know you don't understand it, Mum and Dad, because it's not scientific, but I need the tools that this career will give me to become a writer. Mm-hmm. So like it's a really long game kind of thing. But for me, it was always, how do I get the ability to move through this society in a way that, can help me and my family and help me navigate the difficulties of this world? Law can help me do that. And how do I become a good writer? Law can also help me do that because at the end of the day, even though it's a 32-page advice, I am just trying to tell someone something so that they understand it. So they're very compatible, I think.
I love that you found that compatibility. I think too, working in a corporate environment and working in government, I feel like it really helps build your resilience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're the people that you meet, right? Like the situations you're thrown in, you're like, oh my God, I would never, ever have met anyone like you except for work. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And, people often will have, it's a collaborative kind of thing, working in government, working in law. People will rip into your writing. People will question you. They will come to you and say, what you've put forward is wrong and I'm going to test you.
And you have to defend yourself. Yeah, that's the thing. And like it teaches you how to communicate verbally as well as like in writing, but also like those big archetypal personalities. Like, if I had my way, I would just sit at home in my kitchen, 24 hours a day and not speak to people because I'm a massive introvert, right? But in your job, you are forced to deal with customer service person who does not understand your email, board director who doesn't agree with your, take on this particular, breach that you're reporting about. You've got to like try and, pitch things to different audiences. And that's perfect for a writer because you're trying to get something across to a particular audience and you're able to practice that in your daily life on tons of people, from every walk of life, every background.
And I've never had an issue when I've received my editing reports where I felt, like defensive because I kind of anticipate and expect that there will be feedback and comments and it won't always be positive because that's what you get in your day-to-day.
That's the nature of the day job. Yeah. And I think as well, like, I think the best kinds of writers and the ones who have the least trouble with this career, because I've seen writers who fought every amendment. Like, they approach things on the basis, my work is a work of genius. It cannot be touched. And if you touch it, you are insulting me as a person, right? You are doing something to the core of me as a creative person. But for me, it's like, if you don't understand something I've said or you've given me, feedback that I perceive as negative, I've clearly not communicated something in an understandable way. So for me, it's like, bring on the feedback. Because if there's something that you're not understanding or you don't like, I've done something not universal enough, or I've done something like not clear enough. And so for me, every piece of feedback is like, it challenges me to think about someone else's perspective on it, which is, it's the best kind of way. Because like, instead of just like producing books and saying, here's my work of genius, it's untouchable, and I'm not going to explain it to you, just to receive the greatness, right? That's not a two-way dialogue with your reader. And I don't think they're necessarily going to love it or remember it either, because they may go, that book was like a remote mountaintop. It was so perfect and crystalline and cold and, perfectly articulated that I can't even remember what happened because they just talked about snow, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can actually engage with them and they're thinking about it and they think about it after they put the book down and then they think about it for a bit longer and they tell their friend to read it, you've done your job, right? I think it's okay to receive feedback, and I think it's actually necessary for you to grow as a writer, to take that on board.
Yeah, agreed. We always finish, Rebecca, asking our guests their top tip for writers. Can you give us your top tip, Rebecca?
My top tip for writers is read as much as you can in every genre possible. Like anything, like, back of a cereal box, newspapers, magazines, even a Reader's Digest, there's something you can get out of it. Like, often find when I'm writing something, if I sort of like get pulled into rabbit holes of research, I don't mind, because often I'll get into some topic that I wasn't even thinking about. And something in an academic article or something will like present itself, and I can just drop it into the story and it makes it more realistic. So, the name of a drug, or something that's happening in some, obscure country somewhere, or some government kind of policy. All of that can make your writing a lot better. But for you to find it, you need to read it. And so you need to like not be afraid to read outside your comfort zone. Because I think a lot of writers just go, I just write romance, so I'm just going to read romance. And I think you're doing yourself a massive disservice, because you could make your romance novel 50,000 times better if you knew more stuff and you dropped that stuff in your romance novel.
Yeah, agreed. And, with your busy life, Rebecca, making time to read must be a challenge, given you've got so many plates that you're spinning above your
Well,
head.
I've just adopted this dog, I was telling you, who's super clingy. Like, she'll come over to you and just put her paws on your chest, and you're like, can you get your dog breath out of my face? I'm trying to read this novel by Christian White, right? Can you just... So, yeah, it's hard at the moment because she just will not leave me alone. She's just constantly like, limpet. But, apart from that, like, standing up reading, I'm happy to do that if she's just down on the floor. So, yeah, just keep reading, everyone. It's really important.
Perfect. Great advice, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us on the Book Deal podcast. And The Graduate is out right now in all good bookshops. So
Thanks so much, Madeline. Lovely to talk. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Book Deal podcast. If you are enjoying the pod, we'd really appreciate you following or sharing the show in your podcast directory, checking us out on Instagram and Facebook, or supporting us through our Patreon community at patreon.com/the Book Deal podcast.